Hello, everyone, and welcome back to One Soccer. I am your host for today, Josh Deming, and I am joined by another special guest, Alex Gonge Ruzic, to take a look at three burning questions that need to be asked for the Canadian men's national team leading up to this international window. So, first thing is first, Alex, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Pleasure as always to join you, Josh. Excited for another big CanMNT window. It's been a while since the last one, almost 3 to 4 months. Now you got a big European window, some good, high quality, arguably tier one opposition for Canada to undertake. Not much more for us to want. So I'm excited to dive into the permutations at play.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I mean, we're going to get into some of the stats around how long it's truly been since Canada's had an opportunity to take on these type of nations. But first things first, we're going to start off with just kind of taking a look at some of the healthy players versus non-healthy players, informed players versus non-informed players. And we're going to start with the healthy and informed side. And we were kind of talking about before, Alex, but I thought it was a little bit funny because I basically have three players and then a group of players. And for me, looking and going into this camp, the players that I think are in truly exceptional form. Jonathan David, he's been scoring for fun. He looks very comfortable with Lille right now. Despite Bayern's performances, Davies has still put in a shift. He's very, very active down the left-hand side and always looks to influence the match. Eustachio has found a brand new role and a new lease of life somehow on Porto, where it looked like he just couldn't really do it. All of a sudden, he's found his way in there, starting Champions League matches, playing basically every minute in the last 5 or so matches. It's been an incredible turn of events. And finally, the CF Montreal package. And there's 5 of them who are on this upcoming squad. We included them in because they're all on incredible form. So, Alex, which player right out of those, the group of package and then the other players, do you want to start with?
Yeah, let's start with Alphonso Davies. I feel like it's the easy way to start. It's Canada's most talented player, but Canada's star, the star man that people are going to hone in on. And it's just great to see how consistent in this form that he's found for Bayern. It feels like he's one of those players that hardly gives below a 7.5 out of 10 on his day. He's so consistent, even in losing causes. He's always covering his flank, getting up, getting in the box, getting involved, tracking back defensively, most importantly, making important challenges. His role is constantly evolving too, which is fascinating. Julian Nagelsmann is trusting him more and more to cut inside, to operate in central channels, to really work the half space and combine with guys like Sadio Mane, Kingsley Coman, Leroy Sané, and get involved. So for Canada, it's going to be interesting to see what role they exactly deploy him in. I think we both seem to think it's more on the like an out-and-out winger role, but either way, I think it's going to be fun to see him unleashed for Canada, given how much he just seems to grow every week for Bayern. That's the thing. It seems like he's constantly tweaking, constantly adjusting. We know what's there. We know the pace. We know he can take on defenders 1v1. He has the tricks in his book, but I just love the way he's evolved his game tactically at Bayern.
Yeah, I mean, he's done a fantastic job. And when I've been watching him this season, it's been a lot of fun because he definitely has the opportunity to push up the pitch like we know. And this is a very different looking Bayern side. But I've seen a lot of very defense-minded plays that he's been able to do. He covers well. He's stopped a couple opportunities for the opposition to score with simply just using his speed, getting in, spotting the right way to stop it. But I've also noticed a couple times when he goes up the pitch, there's definitely almost like an opportunity for him just to kind of take a look and be like, I got to stop. Because you know how much he wants to get involved. I mean, he started out as a winger. He's very offense-minded fullback, but there's times where he uses his brain and he takes a look. He's like, this is probably as far as I should go. And I'm excited to see him now play for the national team because you know that that's not going to exist. When Davies flies up down the pitch, you know he's going all the way, as opposed to maybe not having the ball. It's being progressed a little bit up the pitch with, say, like Jamal Musiala or Mane, and then he goes up and he has to stop because, you know, he's got the defensive side of his ability. So I'm really excited to take a look to see what he can do in the offensive side come this window with Canada. But now let's take a look over at Stephen Eustachio. And this has been a player that I have really enjoyed talking about this season because he made that bold decision to leave in January. He had to really work hard to fight and get opportunities in Porto. Didn't really go his way at the end of the last season, despite a very historic Porto side. I mean, it was great for the club side, but for Stefan's side, you know, had to really look on the outside looking in. And now all of a sudden, he's grabbed this midfield position, and it's all his. How impressed have you been with Eustachio leading into this camp?
Yeah, his patience has paid off. I mean, in my opinion, Porto is a massive club. Like, sometimes it isn't talked about how big of a club Porto is, especially historically. So for him to make that move, to bide his time, to take, when he played, to take the most of his chances, especially this year. So you have to do at a big club. Like, they have a deep squad. You look at some of the players that they've sold over the last year, like Luis Diaz and Vitinha playing at PSG as well now. They've had some top players go on to the top level. So when you're at a club like that, that's so deep, especially in the midfield position where he's going up against 4, 5, 6 guys, you just have to train hard. When your opportunity comes, take it, and he's taken it. And I think what's been nice to see is that he's taken it in Eustachio fashion, playing in that midfield pivot. He's really developed into this all-around midfielder for Porto. He gets up the field, he gets in the final third. Every game he has 2 to 3 key passes, should have 1 or 2 assists. He's taking shots now. He's showing confidence. But what's most important with Eustachio and why he was so key to Canada, he hasn't lost that defensive edge to him. He's always getting stuck into tackles. He always finds a way to use his aggressiveness, his positioning, etc., just to get stuck in. And I think that balance has been crucial for Porto, because with the 2-man midfield that they play, it could get stretched very easily. And while there are moments maybe that they have gotten stretched because they are playing a high caliber of opposition, especially in Champions League, I think he's done a great job at filling in and ensuring that they have the cover that they need. And it's going to be exciting to see what this new Eustachio can bring to Canada, because they're going to need a well-rounded general in midfield, and now they have one in Eustachio.
Yeah, I mean, playing at the absolute highest level, Champions League, playing with Porto, exactly what we would want from Stefan Eustachio. Also has the confidence to be the set piece specialist in Porto, which I always think is an important thing, because he's the player that this team is leaning on to whip in the proper ball, whether it's corners, free kick, whatever it may be. And we've seen him do it at the Canadian level, of course. I mean, he's scored a couple of nice free kick goals as well. But now it's time to move on to the final before we get to the package, and that's Jonathan David. And Jonathan David, I mean, there's always been rumors around him. I mean, there was literally a rumor today that was kind of, Fabrizio Romano was kind of teasing the idea of maybe Jonathan David going to United come January, maybe Ronaldo leaves. But despite all the noise, he ended up staying at Lille, and he got off to a really positive start under a manager who I rate very highly, under Paulo Fonseca. We've seen him play as kind of that dual cam to start off the season. He was shifted out wide, and then the position to play back up and as a lone striker was there. Sometimes that position makes me a little bit nervous with Jonathan David, but he's taken it on. And the thing that's really impressed me playing at this number 9 this season is the fact that he is acting and playing like a true 9. You're seeing him doing the step overs, cutting onto the right, cutting onto the left. When you're a striker and you're able to put the ball in the back of the net with ease on both foot, that's almost impossible to defend. How impressive has he been for you this season leading into this camp as well?
Yeah, I just like to constantly see the tweaks he's always bringing to his game, because he's such a smart and cerebral player. From his two-footedness, his ability to play multiple positions. And what I like is under this Lille system, they've really embraced him. One thing I noticed last year is when he was playing as a true 9, Lille didn't suit his strengths. They were always constantly looking to play long. They're constantly trying to just feed him the ball with his back to goal, which he's a guy who needs to be getting touches all over the field. And I think Lille have kind of realized that. First, they're like, oh, we want him to be playing like a true 9, one that has his back to goal, stretching defenses. That's not David. David's a guy who you want in that final third, combining and then popping up with chances. And I think Lille allowing him to embrace that, but also how he's adjusted his game to being so flexible and just roaming and interplaying with his teammates. I think that sort of play is going to be huge for Canada. Just the way he interprets the space in the final third, and he can pop up in moments, but also be involved. Because one thing with strikers is it's a tough position. There will be games where you might go 20, 30 minutes without a touch. And last year you could tell that war against David, especially I think of a game like Chelsea in the Champions League, where he had a good game in that first leg. I remember he had 5 or 6 good touches in the first half, but that's all he was given. Whereas now he's making sure to get involved. He's dropping deep. And I think for Canada, as long as they can continue to keep him active and get him the touches he needs to stay in the game, he has that moment of magic in his boots.
Yeah, I mean, he does, and I'm really excited to see what he can do. I mean, he's got an incredible goal-scoring record for the Canadian men's national team. And the final informed player or players that we're going to be talking about is the package of 5 CF Montreal players. And it's an incredible story because they are so much fun to watch this season. I think they can go on a truly deep run. I thought they were very unlucky not to get into playoffs last season. They went on to win some silverware as well. This is a solid group. There's 3 center backs, outside center backs. Johnson can be considered right back, whatever you want to consider him, because he does feature as a wing back quite often for CF Montreal. But you got Alistair Johnson, you got Kamal Miller, you got the newbie Joel Waterman, the one that everybody wanted to get called up. And then, of course, the 2 midfielders and Samuel Piet, regular with the national team, and, of course, Ismail Kone. out of these players right now, all of them are on honestly really good form. Which one are you most looking forward to seeing, and why?
I mean, that's a tough question. They're all in such outstanding form in their own way. Like Kamal Miller is legitimately playing like one of the best center backs in MLS. Joel Waterman has stepped up immensely. Samuel Piet's just so consistent. He just always, is performing. He's evolved so much over the past few years that he's no longer maybe the one-dimensional midfielder that some may know him as. You add in just the potential and the intrigue and the X factor that Ismail Kone brings. There's no bad choice, there amongst the group. So I think for Canada, given the current situation, I'd go for Piet just because the midfield is what it is. But in terms of the new faces, I mean, Waterman, of course, just his right-footedness, his passing, the profile he brings. I think he's someone that could genuinely be, just a new profile to the center back mix for Canada. And at this point, that's probably something they need. So I'll highlight Waterman specifically, but you can't really go wrong in each position with how unique and how good each player's been.
Yeah, this is a big
And
opportunity.
Alistair Johnson too, just to throw in him. I completely forgot about him as of his evolution as well.
Yeah, Alistair Johnson's form has been absolutely fantastic. Such a good player to have in front of the camera as well. Always cracks me up. Just a big, happy-go-lucky guy, and he's been playing out of his skin this season. But I mean, when it comes to Waterman, I mean, he's the new face on the block. He's going to be a very interesting one to see how he's going to fit in, if he's going to play, where he's going to play. But they're all in incredible form, and this particular window is an opportunity for Samuel Piet to really take a stab at maybe trying to get into that starting 11 for these matches, considering the midfield. But now it's time to turn to the other side of the coin and take a look at the players who maybe are not in the greatest of forms or simply aren't healthy. We have a bunch to highlight here. Let's try to go through them relatively quickly. And we're going to start with Atiba Hutchinson. Now, there was those rumors going around about his contract potentially getting frozen, and then it was down to him or Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd's contract and their fourth-string keeper got frozen, and then now Atiba's slowly working his way back into the fold. Where do you think Atiba is at right now, and how long do you think it's going to be before maybe we see him back in action with Besiktas? And are you worried at all with him leading up to the World Cup?
Yeah, from what it sounds like, John Herdman said it was a bone bruise for Atiba Hutchinson. Obviously, someone who's 39, those sorts of injuries are any sort of deep tissue injuries are never going to be easy to recover from. It happened in preseason, so it's just been something that's been nagging him and working back. Good news, it sounds like there's a very laid out plan. Like Canada's gonna send their medical staff to Istanbul after this camp to work with Atiba Hutchinson. They've been in constant dialogue with Besiktas. So it sounds like sometime in October is the plan, which with the World Cup in November should hopefully at least give him a few weeks to get his legs up and running so that he can feature maybe against Japan in the lead up to the tournament, and then obviously play as planned from Belgium onwards. So for him, it's a bit of an interesting one. I mean, at this age, I think it's good that they're being very precautionary with him. And I think given how Hutchinson takes care of his body, we saw it throughout qualifiers. He'd leave camps early if needed just to get the proper R&R that he needs at this stage of the development. I think as long as everything stays on track, I can be cautiously optimistic, but it is certainly hasn't been ideal to not see him on the field, just given how important he is to Canada and how much we all want to see him in Qatar.
Yeah, 97 caps. I mean, that 100th cap has to come in the World Cup. It simply has to. There's no need to get into how important Hutchinson has been to this program for so long, and it would be a shame if this injury is going to keep him out. But like you said, I mean, he takes such good care of his body, be playing the way he is, almost 40 years old. So I have a good feeling, hopefully, that everything like the plan is set up, and he'll hopefully be back for the World Cup window, because he would be a massive miss for that. But now let's move on to the Club Bruges boys, which, again, this looked like it was going to be a lot of hype around Canadians keeping an eye on Club Bruges. And honestly, this year, if you're going to go and try to watch them, there's not really many opportunities to see them on the pitch. Kyle Larin is a bit of an afterthought right now. I'd honestly say he's probably like fourth or fifth in the striker depth chart if all their strikers are healthy. Really didn't go his way, missing a couple early opportunities, a penalty miss, and he's kind of been pushed to the side a little bit. It's giving a lot of flashbacks to last season, which isn't really what you want if you're Kyle Larin. And then, of course, Tejan Buchanan, who's always been a starter for Club Bruges. He more than likely would have been this season, but he's been injured. It keeps looking like it's being teased on social media that he's close to a return. He will be in camp. Makes sense because obviously he's in Europe. This is a European camp. Whether he'll play or not, we don't know. What's your mindset around these two players going into this camp? Or do you expect to see Buchanan, and what type of Kyle Larin are you expecting to see?
Yeah, I think firstly, just Buchanan's situation. I think we should see a little bit of him from what it sounds. again, what's I guess the glass half full side of the equation is it's a quad injury for him since preseason, and they've managed it very carefully. Sometimes with those sorts of injuries, you can rush back and then it ends up causing long-term problems. So yes, while it sucks to not see him each week, it's nice to know that from what it sounds like, reports out there, Club Brugge have been working very closely with Canada's medical staff to ensure his recovery has been going well, and they've been, constant dialogue ahead of this camp. So I think for him, it's good just that they're being precautionary. Hopefully, he can ease back because I think Bruges miss him. You can tell they've been tweaking their formation, been trying new things out without him. So for Buchanan, I'm optimistic. Larin, it's a little harder to be optimistic about just because he hasn't been playing, and to kind of return to the Eustachio point earlier. Bruges is a big club. Maybe they're not the scale of Porto, but they're a big club in Belgium. They're a team that's constantly in the Champions League like they are this season. It's a deep team. It's a team where you need to perform. You need to take your chances. And unfortunately for Larin, he got those opportunities off the hop and he just didn't take them for, bad luck, form, whatever you want to call it. He didn't take them. It leaves you in this limbo now where you fall down the depth chart quickly. Your opportunities are thin, and they're not coming as fast as you'd like. And for a player like Larin, who's such a form-driven player, he's a player that just gets hot. He'll score he'll go on these runs where he'll score 5 goals in 7 games, or we see it for Canada, where he's just scoring game after game. It's tough to build up momentum and build up form. So I think it's going to hurt him a bit at camp. We're going to see that just maybe miss that sharpness. It was good to see him score though in that one start he did get for Bruges. So it shows that he still has that form in his boots where he can get hot for a minute if you give him a start. But it's just been a bit unfortunate to see how stop-started is, knowing him. But also that's the reality of playing at a club like Bruges where you have that competition.
Yeah, and now, those are some of the key players to kind of keep an eye that weren't there. / Buchanan or Larin, will they feature? How much will they feature? Probably Larin will get the biggest opportunity this upcoming window. But now let's take a look at the overall roster and kind of the surprises. Now, the one for me, not that it should be a surprise, but it was Joel Waterman coming in. We're all very excited to see how he will kind of get implemented in this side, considering he plays with 4 other players. There's also Luka Kolyosho after the disastrous previous window. We weren't sure exactly what kind of issues may or may not be there. He got called back in. Very excited to see a dual national like this, getting hopefully his first look. It's a good opportunity to get one in, whether you give him a World Cup place or not, to fully cap time to your program. Not 100% sure, but the fact that he's back in camp is a huge boost. There's the bit of the balance as well in terms of this midfield. Obviously, some midfielders are out with injuries, kind of causes first concern. Me and Alex are about to get into our starting 11, but I want to turn it over to you just before we go into that starting 11 with Daniel Henry. Now, when he wasn't on the initial roster, everyone was kind of like, whoa, what happened? This is very surprising. He's kind of one of John Herman's guys, big leadership voice in the locker room. What do you know about Henry's injury, and is it cause for concern for him maybe not going to Qatar, considering that TFC have just officially been eliminated from playoffs and we don't know what kind of form he will be in?
Yeah, it's a tough one to gauge. Sounds like it was a hamstring injury, either sustained in training or potentially in the gym, which is a tough blow for him because he hasn't been playing much in terms of his form. So it is an injury. So I guess that's the to answer the question, whereas Daniel Henry is indeed out injured as confirmed by Canada and TFC. So it's going to be interesting. Those hamstring tears, can be very... Sometimes it can be a matter of weeks. Sometimes it can be a matter of months. So right before Qatar, let's just say it's not ideal for Daniel Henry, and it's going to be interesting to see because I don't think he sees the field the rest of the season for TFC just because they have 2 games left. Will he be recovered by then? It's hard to know. So it's going to be a very touch and go situation. You have to imagine Canada holds some sort of October camp with guys who missed the playoffs or who are in need of form. That may help Henry a lot, but it's unfortunate because I thought this camp would have been a good chance to see where Henry's fitness is at after not playing as much, because that would have been a real indication of, with the guys pushing behind him for minutes like Waterman's and Cornelius's, how fit was he to go? And now we don't get to answer that question.
Yeah, a great point. I saw it on Twitter a little bit as well. MLS-based Canadian men's national team camp at any point before the World Cup basically starts is a fantastic idea to get some of these players, specifically the MLS players who missed out on playoffs, like more than likely, whether you want to admit it or not, Alex, the Caps are on the edge, but TFC already eliminated. It'd be great to see some of those guys get minutes like that. But now we're going to look into the starting 11. Now, Alex had a nice debate before we went live, or we started filming here, to basically take a look at the starting 11 that we're predicting. And the big question mark was John Herman, back 3, back 4. players like Buchanan, who are such a focal point to this team being out. And I'm going to go over it, and then we're going to touch on two positions because it's kind of written in stone. I mean, we did choose with a 4-4-2 formation. Now, I was debating because Buchanan wasn't there. Maybe this is the way for Richie Laryea to kind of squeak into the starting 11. But as a team, we worked out together, and this one does make a lot of sense. Just given how John Herdman starts off games and has been playing recently, we went with the 4-4-2 system. Orion in net, Alistair Johnson at right back, Vittoria Miller, the two center backs, Adekubi at left back. Hoylett comes in at right mid, Piet, Eustachio, the two center mids, Davies the left mid, and then the two strikers, Laren and David. Now, more than likely, if everyone was fit, Hutch and Buchanan would come in for Piet and Hoylett. So, Alex, I mean, go over right now why, when we were talking about the starting 11, Hoylett and Piet makes a lot of sense for this 4-4-2 system.
Yeah, I mean, just first and foremost, we kind of assume they're going to use some sort of 4-4-2 system as the base. As we know in qualifiers, the base means nothing in terms of how it evolves. And the nice thing is with the back four of Johnston, Vittoria, Miller, Adekubi, is that it's very flexible. I mean, Johnson tucks in, it becomes a back three very easily. I mean, Davies, Adekubi, their roles are very flexible, can easily turn into a 3-4-2-1, a 3-5-2. So that back four kind of sets the base. And from there, just looking at the like-for-like replacements, I mean, Buchanan typically has been the guy as of late, just because, especially since he's gone to Bruges, he's evolved into a wingback, which gives Herdman a little more tactical flexibility, whereas before he might have leaned on Richie Laryea as the natural replacement there. So I think just looking at that, Hoylett, given his form, given that he's playing well for Reading, they're in a good bit of form, and he's been even playing as a bit of a wingback. He offers a bit of that like-for-like replacement, but also gives Herdman a veteran he can trust, a guy who can cut inside and also make it a 3-5-2. He offers a mix of that tactical flexibility, but also a like-for-like replacement. I do think it's very close between him and Laryea. If Herdman wants a clearly defined back five, he goes for Laryea. But I just think based on what we saw in June and what we've seen from Hoylett gets in ahead of Laryea. And then meanwhile in midfield, if you're looking for like replacements for Hutchinson, knowing Eustachio has more of a free role now, this new version of Samuel Piet complements him perfectly. He's been playing in a double pivot in Montreal with a guy like Victor Wanyama, who's so good at going box to box. I think they would complement each other nicely, whereas a guy like Azorio, Mark-Anthony Kaye, they're at their best in three-man midfields. They can do a job in a two-man midfield, but I think just Piet, based on his form, based on the system he's playing, based on that, Herdman trusts him a lot. It's just there's never really room for him when you have Eustachio and Hutchinson already on the pitch. I think it makes most sense for him to slot in and give Canada that defensive solidity to allow Hoylett, Davies, David Laren to push forward. Even Johnston now, Adekubi from fullback, given how proficient they both are from their positions, to push forward as well, knowing that Eustachio and Piet will hold it down in midfield.
Yeah, and it speaks to the seasons that both Hoylett and Piet are having. Hoylett being able to adapt, playing a lot more deeper and wider than he was used to, really complements basically what Buchanan has done. Maybe not like for like, but in terms of just kind of being able to bring a similar thing compared to like a Corbiano or obviously like a Laryea, it makes a lot of sense. And then same with Piet. I mean, 27 years old, 62 caps. This is a guy who's been around the national team for a very long time. And despite only being 27, it kind of looked like maybe his time with starting minutes were kind of fade, more of a role player. But I think with his form this season for a very talented CF Montreal side, this is a big window for him to make a statement that he deserves to be in the starting 11. So we started off with form, taking a look at players who were basically, on form, playing, healthy versus non. Then we moved on to the tactics, how me and Alex predict to basically this starting 11, how they're going to line up, what systems are going to go. And now we're going to end it off with the competition. Now, 2 matches coming up. I have a fun stat, and then it's going to be followed by Alex's fun stat. But we have Qatar, we have Uruguay coming up, and I've mentioned this a lot. So, I mean, if I repeat myself, it's just because it's fascinating to me that Canada has not played a country outside of CONCACAF since January 2020, where they had an Iceland against friendly. And then Alex, just before we went live, or keep saying live, but before we started recording here, you mentioned that they haven't played outside of North America since 2018, and that was a friendly in Spain.
Yeah, they played New Zealand. John Herdman's first camp, actually.
John Herdman's first camp, yeah.
As a head coach in March 2018. Yeah, it was. They played New Zealand, interestingly enough. So it's been a while. Because I was looking back in terms of outside Europe. I mean, it's been a while since they played genuine top tier opposition like this. I was looking. I mean, they played South Korea in 2016. They played Scotland in 2017, Morocco in 2016. They played Ghana in 2015. It's been a while since they've played, genuine top tier opposition outside of North America. So it's been a while.
Yeah, and we've got them. I mean, I'm pretty excited for both matchups. I think Qatar is a solid team. I know, like, I got a lot of people reaching out to me saying, like, is Qatar really that good of a competition? I mean, this is the defending Asian champions. They didn't have to go through qualification because they're hosts, but in my opinion, I think if they had to go through qualifications, they had a very good opportunity of making this World Cup. This is not a team to take lightly. It's interesting too because they've had a lot of action against CONCACAF nations. They were part of the Gold Cup. They had a 3-1-1 record in that tournament, getting knocked out against the U.S. in the semis. In their last 5 matches, they have 1 win, 4 draws, no losses, so they're in relatively decent form. Take a look at some of their star players. The two. I mean, they're the dynamic duo for Qatar. They're very familiar names. Hafif and Ali are just absolutely fantastic. They made a big impact in that tournament in the Gold Cup. Got a lot of people's attentions as well. They're going to be a good matchup, and I think they're going to be a good opening match in this window to lead to the Uruguay one. What's the number one thing you're looking for them to take out of this Qatar match before they move on to the Uruguay one?
Yeah, for sure. I think this is going to be a good test for them just because Qatar, firstly, they're a very unique profile of team. Like they're kind of, watching them at the Gold Cup. They're a team that does like to hold on to the ball. They're very defined in their ideas because they've worked together for so long. If I'm not mistaken, they've really, since 2016, they've really started to come together as a team. They did Copa Americas in, they did 2 Copa Americas where they went and really looked good. They were surprised. I thought they were going to get run over, and they did well at a Copa America. They went to the Gold Cup and were a penalty away from making the finals, which would have been quite the story to see. Like, they're a very organized, cohesive unit. They're pretty good on the ball. They're very defensively solid, most importantly, which I think you can tell because a lot of the players play together, most of them in Qatar, interestingly enough, and they're well drilled. One thing that really stands out for me is looking at their fixture list. For example, they've been playing friendlies all summer. I mean, in July, they played Antwerp, Mallorca, Udinese, Lazio, Fiorentina, and then they played a Moroccan team based of African players. Ditto with Ghana. They played a Jamaican team filled with local Jamaican players. They've played a couple of Slovakian club teams lately. They've been really preparing for this. What's nice is that since it's a Qatari league, they've kind of been able to control when their players are able to get called up. So they've been able to do all these friendlies outside of windows. So I expect a well-drilled team, one that's going to be very organized and a lot better than people might think on the ball.
And like you just mentioned, the Qatari league, every single player on this Qatar side that got called up plays in that league. So it's very easy to organize the best of the best out of the Qatar player because they all play in the same league and come up with these very creative friendlies, which I think is going to, it's almost like they're a club team, the amount that they play together. And then the other one is the one I think that all of us Canadians are really excited for. It's a true test. I believe right now they're number 13 in the world, and that is Uruguay. This is a team that has been to a semifinal in recent World Cups. It's a team that's got world-class talent on it. And similar to Qatar, they got some experience with CONCACAF nations. Their last 5 matches, they're 4-1-0 in it, including a 3-0 win over Mexico, a 5-0 win over Panama, that 0-0 draw against the U.S., and 3 players that are sticking out to me, and I picked one from basically all areas of the pitch. Arajo at the back, Valverde in the middle, and Darwin Núñez up front. This is going to be a true test. This is the one that I think I'm going to learn the most about where Canada truly stands of the best of the best. What is the number one thing that when you're looking at this Uruguay side that you're excited to see John Herdman in this team do?
I mean, this Uruguay team is a genuine test. Like, I think, first of all, people don't realize how talented they are, which is hilarious to think because they're such a talented team. Because, I mean, you look at Uruguay and you think, oh, the Suarezes and the Cavani's, of course, and, beyond that, like you mentioned, the Núñezes, the Araujos, the Valverdes. It's even beyond that. I mean, of course, there's Fernando Muslera in goal, who's still got he's always seems to have a bit of magic in his gloves. You've got, Martin Cáceres at the back in depth. You got Rodrigo Bentancur, I feel like, is a very underrated midfielder at Tottenham. Lucas Torreira as well, playing at Galatasaray now. They're deep over the pitch, and I think their best 11 is going to be the sort of quality that Canada maybe hasn't seen other than, even if you say Mexico and the U.S., I mean, as Uruguay showed against Mexico, even their quality, when it shines through, it is very genuine top tier. And what I like about Uruguay is how much they've evolved. I mean, during CONMEBOL qualifiers, they finished 3rd behind the big 2 of Brazil and Argentina. They scored a lot more than they typically tend to do. They showed a little, especially in the later games of qualifying. They started out a bit slow and they finished hot, scored a bunch of goals. this is a new look Uruguay. And before, Uruguay was known for being 4-4-2, very solid defensively, and just, letting Cavani and Suarez do the work in attack. Whereas now they're midfield. They really try to play through the midfield and try to play a bit more of a modern game. They're one of the top scoring teams in CONMEBOL because of that, especially in the second half. So I'm expecting a good test for Canada. This is going to be a chance to maybe get a light version of, okay, this is what you're going to be up against when you go against Belgium and Uruguay, and you're going to be playing 3 top midfielders. But when you're going up against Valverde, Torreira, Bentancur, these are going to be guys that can really cause damage. Then when you can't sleep in the final third, Luis Suarez, Darwin Nunez, these guys are going to put the ball in the back of the net against you. So I'm just excited to see that sort of top tier talent combined with how they've really become a modern team, a team that will be comparable to what Canada's going to face.
Yeah, I'm honestly kind of hoping that Uruguay get off on the front foot. I want to see pressure of that quality to kind of put Canada in a bit of a defense mode, a bit of a shock to see how they're going to be able to recover from that, because I think there's a good chance that'll happen as long as they don't panic and know that they deserve to be playing on this type of level. I think it could lead to a very intriguing match. And it's going to be the biggest test that this nation has seen leading up to this World Cup, hands down. I'm excited for the Japan friendly as well, but this for me is the one where I think the most to learn is going to happen, and see how we can balance out just simply playing against some of the best. And I mean the best. I mean, I know Suarez, Cavani, those players are getting up there, but they're prolific goal scorers, and they can bite you when the opportunity comes. So, Alex, before we close up this episode, we always do it. It's predictions. You got 2 fun friendlies coming up. Leave it over to you. How confident are you with Canada getting a result out of these 2 matches?
I think they'll get definitely a result out of the 2 matches. I think obviously the betting favorite would probably be they have a better chance in the Qatar game. I think it's a game they match up very well against Qatar. So I think against Qatar, I think that's going to be result. I'm going to be hard pressed, and I'm going to go for a draw. I just think with all the injuries, it's been so long since Canada's played. I think this camp's going to be a little more, but okay, let's get our tune-up ready for the World Cup. Let's get these combinations going. I'm going to go for a draw against Qatar. And against Uruguay, I'm going to go for a 2-1 Uruguay win. I think Canada's going to give them a good fight, especially after the first game. They're going to build up those combinations. They're going to put out their best 11 against Uruguay, but I think it's going to be a narrow defeat just because Uruguay is that good. But I think that's good for Canada. You want to go out there and see what a good team looks like when they win, a good team looks like when they're playing at their best. And for Canada, it's going to be about as much what they learn from themselves and from their opponents in these games. It is the results.
Yeah, I'll be a little bit more optimistic as usual, but I think there's a lot to learn from that U.S. match. It was a 0-0 one. Uruguay, again, they can be criticized from some ways that they attacked the game, and that one was a bit of a dull match. And I think there's a good opportunity Canada can learn from that. And like I said, I think can balance out an early attack. I think that they could lead to an interesting and close match. So starting off with the more fun one, I'm going to go with a 1-1 result. I think if the U.S. can do it, Canada can do it as well. I think it'll be a good balancing act to see what's going to happen there. And then the Qatar one, I got some confidence as well. I'm going to go with a 2-1 result, close affair, lots of chance. I think that match will be a little bit more open. And I think we're just simply in for a good window with a ton of fantastic football. That's all we can hope for. I appreciate, Alex, as always, you coming on and helping me do this little preview, 3 questions that we want to ask, even though that there's probably a little bit more than 3 questions. But as always, Alex, appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk to you soon.